welcome to episode 5 of Creative Confidence. And today we're going to be talking about getting started. And we're thinking in particular about dealing with things like procrastination. So I'm Angela Nicholson, I'm the founder of SheClicks, and today I'm joined by Katie Teasdale-Ward from Kudosity and Michelle Rogers from Thinking Space Coaching. Hi guys, how are you doing?
Hi.
Nice to see you too. It's lovely to have another one in.
Yeah, 3 of us. Very nice.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great to see you.
So shall I introduce Michelle?
Why not? That sounds like a good plan.
So I've known Michelle for about 3 years, but we've probably had mutual friends within sort of the photography industry and within the publishing industry for longer than that. But I've been working professionally with Michelle from Thinking Space Coaching for actively probably 3 years. And the reason that I work with Michelle is because I find that it helps me to have somebody who I can talk to about my direction, about where to get some clarity of ideas, because I often have a million tabs open and not really doing any of the million. So Michelle certainly helps me with that. And it helps me to speak with somebody who I know has worked with a whole variety of different types of people, creatives, you know, lots of different industries. So Michelle brings with her a real clarity of communication and a real understanding of being able to look at problems from a very different perspective. So we wanted to really bring in and bolster the kind of the intelligence pool and the kind of creativity pool. That's why I was on mute for such a long time. And just so that we can share kind of our experiences and our ideas and take creative confidence just to a different MasterChef style level.
Nice introduction. Thanks for that, Katie. By the way, I should point out, when I'm looking down here, I'm not ignoring everybody. I'm just keeping an eye on Facebook and make sure it's announcements and if we've got any comments or questions. So that's what I'm doing. Anyway, Michelle, it's lovely to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me. It's a real pleasure, having known both of you for quite a while now. It's really great to be able to get involved with this because I've just watched how successfully it's been going the last few times. So I feel very privileged to be with you.
Thank you. Now, I should point out that Michelle and I used to work together and you used to have the desk sort of diagonally opposite mine. And it's very funny because there'd be all sorts of things going on and we just sort of occasionally catch eyes and nod knowingly. So, yeah.
I'm always very envious of your desk because it was covered with lots of exciting parcels from camera manufacturers. It was much more interesting than the piles of admin on mine.
And things to play with
all over the world to it's like, oh yeah, great.
So it sounds a bit like we're not getting going at the moment, which
Maybe
is interesting because it's
procrastinating.
the topic of our conversation. So procrastination, I've been experiencing a little bit of this today because I'm supposed to be writing something and little bits of things keep happening and distracting me and I'm off looking at those, and it's not a particularly big task, I just can't quite get down to it. And, you know, I think it's something that we all have to deal with occasionally.
Yeah, definitely. I think it doesn't matter how skilled we are at what we're doing or whether it's something we, you know, really want to get around to doing. And procrastination strikes at the most inconvenient of times. And in fact, sometimes I think it's almost worse when it's something that you really do want to do and it's a project you really do want to get your teeth stuck into. And I think actually sometimes procrastination is a manifestation of fear, actually. I don't know what you think about that, Katie. I think we've talked quite a lot in the past about feeling sort of fearful of getting started.
Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest things. And I think procrastination is a word that lots of people use and it can easily be replaced by I'm not sure how to do that. I'm fearful of doing that. My experience often of procrastination, I think, is when I'm not 100% sure or clear about what the task actually is. So rather than ask for clarity or just ask for, you know, ask for the information that I feel I would need to be able to complete that task, I will just be like, oh no, it's okay, it's fine, I'll work it out, I'll sort it out. And inevitably I then spend a huge portion of my time either faffing, and it looks like a physical faff because it can be cleaning, it can be all sorts, but also I'm churning it over in my head all the time, and I'm thinking, why don't I just ask? So often procrastination can just be another word for I'm not sure how to. That's my biggest number one kind of ways in which it manifests itself. And then second is kind of like, I'm not sure I'm ready to do that. Well, nobody's ever ready.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting because on the face of it, saying getting started, it could sound like mojo and dealing with motivation, which is what we spoke about last time. But this isn't about not wanting to do something or struggling to sort of feel, the desire to do something. It's just struggling to actually get on with it, which is slightly different, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know whether either of you have ever read Stephen Pressfield's book, The War of Art. It's a really great book for creatives with a title like that. But he talks in that about resistance, and he identifies resistance as a force, a bit like gravity. And he says that resistance is the universal force which has the goal of preventing change. And so often what we're procrastinating about is something that's going to create change in our lives. So even if it's about making a change at work, it's about making a change in your lifestyle. I mean, hasn't 2020 just been the year of change? And that resistance, I think, that he talks about is what we're talking about in terms of procrastination. It's kind of it's almost like you're physically held back from getting on with the thing that you really, really want to get to. And I think that this year has had a huge effect on people's on their mojo, like you talked about last time, but also a sense of almost not feeling that it's okay to chase your goals because there's so much else going on in the world. Why am I thinking about entering a photography competition or trying to get a book of photos published or whatever? And yet those goals are just as relevant now as they were back in January when we thought it was going to be this great year.
Yeah.
Yay for January. I think one of the funny things about procrastination is you can be experiencing it and be very productive at the same time. So for example, I could sit down and think, oh, I've got to write this thing. Oh, I'll just schedule this webinar. I'll put the washing on. I better post that. I'll do this. And you're doing loads and loads of things. You're just not doing the one thing that you actually really need to get on with.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that goes back to that idea of it's almost easier to do something else than it is to just knuckle down. So when that thing is looming and waiting to happen, you just find a whole bunch of other stuff, don't you? I mean, I guess that's why I'm such a big fan of fake deadlines. But I think a fake deadline is, even though it's false, you can use it to help move yourself forward. And I will often say to myself, I need to get that done by sort of 3 p.m. on Thursday, and then sort of plan backwards from that, and book a slot in my own diary, which does sound a bit crazy, but book an appointment with myself to sit down and write that blog post, or get my invoices done or something like that. And I think just something like that can be the push you need just to get you started.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one, because I know if I put something in my calendar, I won't remember in a week's time or 2 weeks' time whether that's the actual deadline or the fake deadline. So I'll try and meet the deadline.
Yeah.
Something I've found that I sometimes do, and I'm really trying to tackle it, is say you've got something to do, but you've got to do something else in half an hour. You've got someone's coming around in half an hour. No, that wouldn't happen, would it? The phone's going to ring in half an hour. You've got a call or something like that. You've got to walk the dog before it's dark. You think, oh, I've only got half an hour, it's not worth starting it. And I actually think, well, no, I can do something very productive in that 30 minutes, because otherwise you're going to be just sort of twiddling your thumb. So if I've got a task, I will actually start, you know, writing some bullet points, or just think through it and use that time constructively. And then whatever happens after the, you know, the point where you've got to stop and do the other thing, at least you feel like you've made a start and you can focus on that thing properly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that, you know, another thing that I'll do is set my timer for 15 minutes. And, you know, so like I was just saying about doing my invoices, I can't do all of my invoices in 15 minutes, but I might be able to do 2. And then the next time I sit down to do some, there are 2 fewer to do. And the other thing about that is as well, is if you've got a bigger block of time that's available to you, but there's something that you're putting off, if you do it for 15 minutes, at the end of that 15 minutes, you might find that you're kind of, actually, this isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Sometimes thinking about starting something, you know, thinking about starting your tax return is a lot worse than doing your tax return. You know, so if you can just get yourself 15 minutes into something, you know, it's like that image that the 3 of us were talking about earlier before we started, about that idea of it's much easier to turn the wheels of a car when a car's in motion than it is when the car's stationary on the drive and they're just kind of like squeaking against the concrete. You know, if you're going, however slow you're going, much easier to turn that wheel and, you know, change direction and make progress. So yeah, again, and you know, fake deadlines and set your timer for 15 minutes.
And that whole thing about kind of starting small is so important, because it is the things that get, you know, that manifest in your head of like, oh, this is a big project, or this is, you know, this is a real, you know, and lots of people are waiting for this, and what happens if I don't? You can have this, you know, full-on narrative going off in your head, that actually when you do a really tiny bit of it, just writing down the header, or picking up the camera, or just clicking it, or picking up your mobile phone, whatever it is, break it down to its absolute smallest kind of, you know, bit, and then at least you'll have started. And it is that whole just tiny little increments. I was terrified of doing any of the kind of Facebook lives or video and stuff, and I'd had probably 6 months of trying to do pre-recorded video, you know, and just fluffing over words, not being able to really have or even being able to communicate what it was that the video was going to be about. And then I think we had a chat, and because you're excellent at kind of just doing it and just doing the webinars, and just it's all live and blah, 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 and you would just try it live. And then the minute I did it, because it wasn't scripted and because it doesn't matter, you know, if it failed, or if the camera fell off, or if I didn't have the connection right, or if I had muted it, whatever, it didn't matter. But what did matter was just having a go, and then going, oh, actually it wasn't as bad, and then having a go again and having a go again, because then suddenly you have achieved that, and you can now say, I can do that. Might not be brilliant, but it's a start. And also now I can think about the next thing as well. While I'm refining that, I can move on to the next thing, and suddenly you've taken 2 steps forward rather than just going, I can't.
And I think the thing about your Facebook lives that you're doing is they are so authentic, and they are so you, and you know, anybody who knows you can just see there are no airs and graces. This is, you know, pure Katie, but there is such a value to that, particularly now, because we don't need to be told a whole lot of, you know, superficial made up stuff. We want to see real people doing real stuff, and that's what we see in your Facebook lives. And you know, you just embodied that idea of starting small is better than not starting at all.
But it took me a long time to get there. But then I just did it. And the funny thing is that I waited to a perfect time that was perfect for me, because I thought everybody's doing the school run, so nobody's around. You know, it's time when everybody's making their cup of tea because they're starting the work. So it did. So suddenly I had reframed that it didn't matter if nobody was watching, because I was doing it for what I wanted to achieve and for what and how I wanted to communicate.
Yeah.
It just broke it down to being that whole just doing, break it down to something, to just the smallest bit, and then just see what happens, because you'll feel so much better having something to review that's happened, rather than thinking about all the 20 tabs that are open that you feel like you haven't achieved. And also talk to somebody. You know, we talk a lot about the community of SheClicks, and we talk a lot about that as a support network, which is, you know, SheClicks is phenomenal for. I also think that there is a real value in kind of having a handful of friends from a diverse kind of, you know what it's like to have different types of friends. There's always going to be one friend who will try and be as nice as possible and try and put a bow on it and all of that, and that's lovely. And sometimes in a day or in a week or in a month you need that person to go to because you need an emotional hug. And there's also going to be another person that just goes, well, you know, if we're going to have this chat, let's have it. And sometimes you need that. So have a pool of people that can help and support, but also move you forward.
Yeah,
absolutely. Sorry, Ange.
I was just going to say that they may help with the task you were talking about earlier, about needing some clarity, because sometimes you have a conversation with people. I'm working on this task, or I've got this idea for a photograph or a series of photographs, and I can't quite think through how to do this, or you want to do it for a client, or it's the brief of a competition or something like that, and you're trying to think it through. And just hearing their take on it and them asking questions to help them understand what you're trying to achieve can really help you see your way through it, and perhaps sort of break it down into little sections. So you think, oh, okay, so I need to do that, then that, then that, then I've got it done.
Yeah.
But Katie, you were saying about, you know, sort of doing your first Facebook Live when there was nobody in the world watching. I think that can be, I think sometimes, you know, it's great if you can engineer these situations, but sometimes sort of thinking through, oh, I can't do it until, can be an issue. So like, you know, you sit down to write something, oh, I can't do this because I haven't got my pencil sharp and I need a sharper pencil. I can't write it with blue ink. I've got to find my black ink.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. Or I'm going to have to buy a macro lens and I don't know which macro lens I need, and blah, blah, blah. So you can kind of build tasks up. You can break it down. You could sort of put a post on SheClicks and sort of say, right, I've got this camera, I need a macro lens, which one should I get? Or you could actually start thinking through the photography and start trying to work it out with the existing kit that you've got, and just make a stab at it, have a start. Because you might find actually you don't want to go that close. Maybe you do want to be further back and use the lens that you always had anyway.
Yeah. But I think one thing that I've learned from Michelle, and that we've worked on for a long period of time, is the use of language, and how important the language is that you kind of tell yourself and that you listen to. So there's two words that you mentioned there, was until and can't. So until is a brilliant way to stop yourself from doing anything. You know, I can't go to the gym until I've already lost 2 stone. I can't go to the gym until I look better in Lycra. I ain't gonna be gonna. But there are these words that will be like roadblocks to the procrastination. And the other word is can't. And one thing I was talking to, I can't remember who it was, but we were saying what would happen if you exchange the word can't for won't. Absolutely. And how does that suddenly feel? You know, how does that put you in a place of productivity or kind of forward motion if you switch out can't for won't? And because of Michelle's linguistic background as well, you know, it was just a fascinating way in which we've talked about examples of how that language can propel us forward, but also can kind of stop us in our tracks.
Have you got an example? Either of you?
I think so. I've worked with quite a few people who want to write, so they want to, write a book or something like that, and they will say oh, I can't write that. I can't write yet because I don't have all the information I need or whatever. And I said, well, I'm not sure that it's that you can't. Is it just that you won't write it until then? And they go, oh, yeah, you're right. And then when you think about that, you say, well, if you won't, that's kind of a choice. You're making a choice. You're choosing not to write that. You're not physically unable to do it, but you are making that choice. If you've made the choice not to do it, then could you make the choice to do it? And is the first thing that, okay, you maybe can't write everything because you need to go and interview some people about something or other, but can you write synopses for the chapter headings? Can you come up with a list of people you want to speak to? Can you write an introduction? Can you imagine what the blurb might be on the back of your book? Who are you going to ask to review your book to get those little bits of blurb or whatever? And it's just something that shifts you from can't to won't. And when you realize that won't or don't is a choice, then you can choose differently.
That's really interesting.
I love that.
I guess it makes you look at how you can switch it back, or from won't to will or doing.
Yeah, exactly. And also I think that we get so hung up on things having to be perfect, a bit like Katie and her Facebook lives. Something's got to be, it's got to be brilliant, it's got to, I worked with somebody once who wanted to write a film script, and he was so busy kind of writing his Oscar speech that he just didn't start writing the script. Like, let's work with something that we can do now. What can we do this week?
Love that.
What's different? Next time I speak to you, what will we be looking at? Just sort of like you said earlier about breaking something down into really small pieces. And also I think another important thing is to prepare yourself to achieve. So you make it as easy as possible. Don't decide that you're going to do some huge piece of creative work the day the kids break up from school, because it's just not gonna work. So make things as easy as possible. If you want to start couch to 5k, and you're going to start it next Monday, get all your kit out on Sunday, so that when you get up in the morning, there's no excuses like, I couldn't find the right socks, or whatever. It's all there, it's all ready. Make it as easy as you can.
Yes.
Don't use that as a procrastination activity, but once you've kind of set that deadline, fake or otherwise, I'm going to run on Monday morning, get everything ready on Sunday for that activity, whatever it is.
I've got a really good way of turning that into a photographic thing, actually, because I know sometimes you look at the weather forecast, you think, oh, tomorrow morning it might be misty and there might be some sun and there might be some frost. It could be a lovely day. Okay, well, if it is like that tomorrow, I'll get up and I'll take some photographs. And I wake up the next day and I said, John's wandering around, and what's the weather like? Oh, I don't know. Oh, I've probably missed it now. However, if I, clear my memory card, put it in the camera, put the charge the battery, and take all the kit I need into the house, the next day I'm thinking my camera, I'm ready, I'm out, and I'm off. Taking photographs. And it's almost like I've made the mental decision the night before whether I'm actually going to do it, but I'm kind of kidding myself.
I'm
not going to do it. Or that I'm kidding myself and I don't do it because I know I'm not going to. So I think that's a really good point. Is sort of prepare yourself to do it, make it possible to actually drive forward.
And another little trick for doing that actually is to introduce some accountability. So this is the thing that we talk about hugely in coaching. In fact, I would say it's possibly one of the most valuable aspects of coaching, is providing that accountability for somebody. I mean, it's scientifically shown that if you write your goals down, you're more likely to achieve them. If you want to improve that even further, write them down and share them with somebody. Because, back to what you guys were saying about having that circle of friends who can offer perspective and clarity, they can also offer accountability. You know, so if you're in SheClicks and you say, you know, next week I'm going to go out at, you know, 4 o'clock every afternoon and take a picture of the same tree just to see how the sun moves over that week or whatever, somebody's going to ask you about it if you posted that. And the fact that you know they're going to ask you is going to motivate you to do it. You know, even if you end up standing out there in the rain or whatever, I'm sure you'll find something to take a picture of. You know, but don't we all want to be more successful at the goals we set? And if it's as easy as just writing it down and telling somebody else, you know, the percentage likelihood of you achieving that goal goes up massively just by doing that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, because also, I mean, the other thing that would happen, say if you posted in SheClicks, is someone else says, oh yes, you know, I've got a tree that I think is amazing, I'm going to pop out and do it at 4 o'clock as well. And then suddenly you've got this little network of people all photographing trees at 4 p.m. every day, and it becomes a real thing and everyone's into it. And then you can move on to the next thing that you want to do, maybe 4 a.m. Who knows?
Possibly fewer takers for that one.
Maybe.
But it does, once you begin to achieve those goals and start to have that kind of forward momentum, the enthusiasm and your ability to share your enthusiasm and your productivity, and I did this and so can you, and that becomes really loud, really you know, full of energy, and people are attracted to that.
Absolutely.
People ultimately want other people to be successful. You know, we don't want people to fail. We don't like the underdog. We don't like feeling how we've been feeling. We want to be achieving all of our goals, but this year will have bruised everyone all over the world. You know, there is that will be taken into consideration. So there is nothing wrong with kind of saying, do you know what, there's only a few weeks left of this year, I'm just going to dial down the 10 things to one thing, or to whatever, but it will feel like it's manageable and not so overwhelming, because at the moment people don't need any more feelings of overwhelm. But I think just to kind of recap on the things that will stop us from getting started.
Stop just getting started.
Start. I don't know. Started or stopped us, but you know, it is those things that you said about the making the choice to do it, I think is really, really important. The lack and the breaking things down into more achievable stuff. Definitely.
And I think the more times that you start something and you go straight on with it and you get it done and you're happy with it at the end of it, the more often you can do that, the more likely it is to happen in the future, because you kind of know the things that you need to do to make it work, and you appreciate how good you feel about it, because nobody likes spending 4 hours doing something that actually only took 30 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we wind up, shall we recap on the things to help with dealing with procrastination, resistance, failure to get on with stuff? Who wants to kick off? Who wants to take lead?
Okay, I'll go first. I would say the first thing to do would be write it down and share it with someone else.
Okay, Katie, what's your next one?
I'd say just starting small, start it small, you know, and just keep going and just keep doing it.
I'm going to go with get people involved, get their insight, get their support and their perspective. So if you're struggling with a big task, have a chat with them, get them to help you break it down, think it through, and feel more positive about getting on with it.
And then I think prepare in advance to make that happen. So, you know, get everything ready so that when you do get started, you're good to go. But I think, you know, the one thing that comes out of all these hints is that we don't have like one recipe that fits everybody. I hope that everybody watching will pick out one thing that they can do, you know, one of the things we tried, whether it's set your timer for 15 minutes, you know, or just get on with it or whatever. I hope that, you know, of the various things that's come out, there'll be one thing that will just make, you know, you personally able to get something started this weekend.
Yeah,
great. Thank you for that. I think the one thing I'm really going to start thinking about is the difference between can't and won't. And if I go into the house having not prepared my camera for tomorrow morning, I've made a decision I'm not going to do it. So I'm not going to feel bad in the morning. I decided last night. So.
Cool.
So great. It's been really fantastic chatting with you both and hearing your insights. I hope everybody has found some inspiration and they're going to, like you say, fire into the weekend and get stuff done.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.